when did you first get wind of Leroy McGuirk's plot to take you out that Jim Ross talked about in his book? So Ted, I don't know. I don't know that all of our listeners know the backstory on this. Can you tell the full story?
Okay. So I go and I start wrestling in the summer of '75 for Bill Watts in that territory. Now, Bill Watts and Leroy McGuirk had become partners, and I don't know all the background of that, but I know obviously, and Bill Watts played football at the University of Oklahoma, and so he was an athlete, and he had got in the business, and he's a brilliant guy, and so he's now like partners with Leroy McGuirk. And at the time, uh, I guess when he first went to work for Leroy McGuirk's territory. I mean, I can remember back when I was with my mom and dad, and um, I was like in the first. I don't even know if I was in the first grade yet, but I remember that we stayed in Tulsa, Oklahoma, for a summer. And all I can remember is this house that we rented had this big yard with a huge hedge over. Anyway, it's funny the things you remember. But anyway, I remember that. That was for Leroy McGuirk. That's the first time I ever heard of Leroy McGuirk. And of course by this time, he was already blind, couldn't see. Um, and so, like fast forward, I go, we go, I grow up, and then I go back to my first shot at wrestling because Dick Murdoch talked to Watts and got me booked. And I spent the previous summer as a referee in the Amarillo territory, and you learn a lot just by being the third man in the ring. You really do. And of course, because I grew up in the business and everything, nobody thought that I needed to, you know, you know, I could bump, I could do the stuff, and so they just started me. And so I mean, it was kind of like, okay, kid, let's see what you got. And so I started there in Mid South, and so um, Leroy McGuirk has a daughter. And I think, everybody, I mean, if you guys remember who Mike McGuirk is, well, back when I met her, I mean, I'm trying to think of there was like a famous, she was, um, I don't know if she was in any movies or what, but I mean, she beautiful. And, I saw Mike, and I mean, that's who she reminded me of.
Hmm.
Yeah, so anyway, now, and so like you start talking to somebody, and like one thing led to another, and pretty soon Mike and I are dating. And so when and and it was funny too, because I remember one night we had a show in I think Little Rock, Arkansas, and I was driving or riding back to Tulsa with Bill Watts and a couple other guys, and I had told Mike, I said, tell me a place that's along the way where I can have them drop me off and meet you there, because this was supposed to be a big secret, of us of seeing each other. And so she gave me a place and said okay, and so uh, and so when we get to the place, uh, Bill says, "Oh well, is your ride here yet?" And I said, "Not yet, but they'll be here." I said, "Oh, we'll wait. We don't want you to get lost. Left, out in the middle of nowhere, your ride doesn't show up. So they'll show up. I'm sure of it. No, that's okay. We'll wait."
Oh no.
And I kept trying to, and they just finally started laughing. They said, "Look, you think it's a big secret, but everybody in this car knows that you're seeing Mike." Oh gosh, it's like the only, and so uh, when Leroy heard about it, he went ballistic. I mean, he was like, you got to. Jim Ross can tell the story much better than I can because he lived it. Now Jim's working for the company at the time. And Jim at that time was just like a referee, but he also helped, you know, Leroy, get around and stuff like that. So he said he gets this call from Leroy, and he says I'm gonna kill that no good sob. And so Jim tells a story about having to get in the car with Leroy McGuirk, and he's got like a 38 revolver, and he's a blind guy, right? He's got a 38 revolver in his lap.
Oh God.
Yeah, and he's like, and he's smoking a cigar, and I said the cigar, like one of the thing, like it fell off and hit him on the leg and kind of burned him, and which threw the gun on the floor or something. He says I'm just now praying, so God let me make it through this ordeal. And so they show up, I can't remember where we were at the time, but he was never going to find me anyway. I mean, because all the boys and Murdoch, he got the big kick out of this. So all everything quiets down, and but we're wrestling in Tulsa, and whenever we wrestled in Tulsa, Leroy would have somebody bring him in the dressing room so he could greet all the guys and everything, and and so they bring him in the dressing room, and and everybody knows, but Dick Murdoch, he looks at me, and it's kind of like he's about to say, hey, Tommy. I'm looking at him, like with my hands, like I'm praying, like, don't do it, Murdoch. Don't you dare do it. And he just kept teasing that, and finally Leroy left. But man, yeah. So it was a hot deal for a while, and then just that's just life, and the other part of this story is that my first marriage was in the crapper, and if that hadn't been the case, then I wouldn't be seeing anybody. But okay, at the time, I mean, I guess illegally at the time, I was still married, but we weren't living together or seeing each other, and we were in the midst of a divorce. So
Hmm.
anyway, that's the.
And what became of your relationship with Mike?
Well, it's kind of like, I left the territory, and um, that was it. It was just kind of one of those deals. It was like, and actually, one of the things that I did that that never would have, I'm a huge fan of Elvis Presley. I
Hmm.
think Elvis Presley, uh, hands down, is probably the single greatest and most renowned and well-known entertainer ever.
Yep.
I mean, pick a genre. And she was a Mike and her whole family. I mean, actually, she told me that her and her mother got to see Elvis in Vegas because the NWA annually has a meeting for the organization and all of the people in it, and the heads, all the promoters that were, part of the NWA would meet in Las Vegas, like once a year. And while they were out there, he happened to be in Vegas, and so she got to see him out there.
Wow.
Well, so then while we're dating, she says Elvis Presley is coming to Tulsa, and it just worked out, like, and he was going to, I think he was going to be on a like a Saturday or a Sunday. I can't remember what it was, but I was going to be there. I was going to be in Tulsa. I mean, to wrestle, but maybe not on that day. I can't remember. Anyway, um, Mike gets us tickets
Nice.
to go, and so I got to see Elvis Presley live, um, there. And what was funny was that apparently while they were out and I didn't know this, but uh, Elvis was a huge wrestling fan.
Really?
Yes. Matter of fact, they said that in the old Memphis Coliseum, and I've only wrestled there a couple times. You know, it's like if you look up, there's a catwalk way up at the top, and that catwalk goes out all the way to like right in the middle of the building.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like crosses there, and you could sit up there and be looking down and have the best seat in the house for a wrestling match. And they said that they had done that. They snuck Elvis into the building and put him way up on that catwalk. And if you look up, I mean, it's far enough up that you couldn't tell who, unless you had binoculars,
Right.
hey, who's that up there? But Elvis actually watched the show from that viewpoint in Memphis, Tennessee. Here's where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
So we go and see Elvis, and we had pretty good seats. And in this show, it's like if you ever watch there's a documentary on him about when they started going on tour, and they were like 15 days, 15 cities, and things like that. And the way like the way the show opened and everything, and I experienced all that. So apparently, Mike noticed Mike McGuirk noticed one of the what do you call them? The guys that set up and tear down and all that stuff that traveled with them,
Oh, like roadies.
a roadie, and so she recognized one of the guys, and and waved at him, and he responded, and so she just ran up there and talked to him for a minute, and so she comes back and he says, okay, they're staying at the whatever hotel, and obviously they've got the whole top floor, and we have the password to get in.
Whoa.
So I'm going, holy shit, I'm gonna get to meet Elvis Presley. So the concert was the greatest of all time and everything. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what caused this flare up between Mike and I, but we got in the biggest damn fight about something. I can't even remember what it was, but because of that fight, we didn't go.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, no kidding.
Brutal. So you could have met Elvis
I
if you
could
hadn't
have.
gotten into a fight.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
have buried that hatchet quick.